Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It's Monday, March 16th, 2026. The Monday the 16th, presumably the spookiest Monday you can have, I guess, following up to Friday the 13th. An important weekend of events. I mean, news events. But to hell with all of that, we'll pay more attention to other stuff, if you don't mind too much. Of course, the Oscars aired last night, and like the State of the Union, I didn't watch it. That's just not my thing. Some important awards given, some important awards probably not given, or given to the wrong people, or we're probably angry about them, or celebrating them in various ways. But I'll sort of catch up by osmosis from hearing it from you. But yeah, not an area that I spend a great deal of time concentrating on. And mostly I haven't seen the movies. I see them later on when they come on for free on something I can stream here at home, which is sort of an overall picture of the state of the industry, really, if you take a look at it. If you take a look really closely, there's many people are saying they just don't go to the movies anymore. But many people do. And they enjoyed it immensely, I am sure. It was an important weekend for other events and other reasons. I saw a great, somebody, and I'm sure I can track it down if I go and look back far enough in Blue Sky, but somebody put out, there it is, a funny graphic joke. But we can make it into, we'll be explaining it, so we'll take all the humor out of it, but just so you know what's going on. Jedi PTM, sending around a calendar of sorts. Sorry, I'm booked all weekend, and it is I guess from the perspective, a calendar being kept, an online calendar being kept by a knife. What would a knife be doing all weekend? Well, I'm busy on Friday the 13th, and then there's a little icon of, Jason in his murderous hockey mask. Saturday, the knife is busy too for 3/14 Pi Day. Necessary to have a knife on hand to slice your pie. We didn't get a chance to do a Pie Day show since it was on Saturday. And on Sunday, of course, the Ides of March. Also a big day in knife history. So I thought that was rather clever. And what an amazing string to put together. That guy should be, I don't know who it is, actually. I'm thinking it's a cartoon picture here. It's not going to tell me gender. Just a dad who loves all things sci-fi. So we'll say that's a gendered statement. And go from there. But he's about that close to... He should have been writing the connections puzzle for the New York Times, if you're familiar with that. And maybe you're not, because you canceled your New York Times subscription because of their horrible milquetoast bias. I don't know. It's important that we have a subscription here so we can give you the very large amount of very important and still very good coverage that they do provide, although we'd all like to... hit their headline writers over the head with a whack-a-mole mallet once in a while. All right. Well, let's get started with our recap. It was, I think, a standard crazy weekend, that is to say, everything went to hell, like rhetorically. The United States is adrift among the sea of nations. No one can believe what's going on here, least of all us. All we can do is document the atrocities. Greg Dworkin is here to do it, and because it was a big movie weekend, we give you the big movie play-on. It's not a movie... Yeah, I guess I could have done a 20th Century Fox one, but that's partiality. This is award show music. Welcome, Greg Dworkin. How are you, Greg?
We're fine. We're fine. We're dry, which is good, because it's like big time raining here.
Fine.
And we still have power. So
yeah, good. Oh, all right. Well, were you expecting to have been hit by weather already?
Yes.
We're waiting until later.
Yeah, we got flood watch warnings as of 5 a.m., and the rain's coming down, steady, but nothing terrible. The problem is what we in the weather industry refer to as squalls.
Yes, I believe you're forward on the squall line, and we're getting the tail end of it that hasn't gotten here yet because of the way the country is shaped.
Yeah, well, so we'll have to fix that. In fact, Newt Gingrich had a good idea about how to get out of the problem in the Middle East. You may recall that what's going on here is, as you pointed out, the U.S. is adrift in the Sea of Nations because the Strait of Reality is blocked. And so Newt Gingrich had an idea. He said, take a dozen or so thermonuclear devices and blow up a new channel so Saudi Arabia can get their oil out without having to go through the Strait of Hormuz. Problem solved. And the funny thing is, apparently, he took this idea from a satirical article. We know this because on Twitter, community notes were added, and the community note to his post said along the lines of, if you read through the article at the bottom, said this is satire, nobody with half a brain cell should even think about doing this. He skipped that part and just went ahead and posted it. So I thought that was pretty good.
I mean, it could, I don't know. He's dumb enough. He's not dumb. I mean, Trump is like flat dumb. But King, I don't know. I have a feeling like Gingrich might be thinking
he's edgy and innovative.
Yeah,
and,
maybe he may be sitting there saying, "I know it was satire. Why does everybody think I don't think so?" I don't know. Well,
yeah. Why does everybody think I don't think?
Yeah. I mean, it's the latest in the long line of actually, humorous and clearly offered as satire diagrams of the Strait of Hormuz and ways of increasingly stupid ways of getting the oil around the strait. And I don't know. I don't know whether he meant to add to that or, Newt Gingrich, he might actually be interested in detonating nuclear devices all across the Arabian Peninsula. I don't know.
Hey, I got something
Can't tell
for
with
you.
that guy. Yes. All right.
I'm going to put it at the very, very bottom. Yes, it's a video. Yes, it's from YouTube.
Oh.
But Saturday Night Live, SNL had two good skits of note.
Wow, that's a lot.
One was about Ma Hospital,
but
that doesn't really translate well for us playing on the air. It's very good. I recommend you go to YouTube and see it.
All right.
But this one is just a weekend update with a visit by Tucker Carlson.
Okay.
And the person, who's doing Tucker just captures everything so well. And since we were talking about a stupid person's idea of a smart person in Newt Gingrich, I just thought we should play this as well.
All right. Well, I think that fits the bill, too. He certainly thinks he's a genius. All right. Let's see if this... wait a minute. There might be a little bit of advertising blast first. Can I turn the sound off on that? Will they allow me to turn down the sound on a commercial? Let's see. All right. Nope. Well, they skipped right past it. So good. All right. Here comes the sound again. Weekend update. You know how they begin with that.
Some people think liberal politics are influencing the awards too much. Here with his take is conservative commentator Tucker Carlson.
Clearly talking about the Oscars.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
And again, you don't have to play the whole thing. You'll get the idea.
Huh. Really? Yes. Why don't we grab some popcorn and watch American culture collapse? What are we doing? What's going on?
All right, coming in hot. Well, how do you feel about this year's nominees?
Where to even begin? Oh, I know. Why don't we talk about Sinners? That's right, Sinners. Because, of course, leftist woke America's favorite movie this year is about sinning. Huh. Really? Why does that not surprise me? No, sorry, kids. We don't go to church anymore. We go to Sinners. That's the rule. That's the goal now.
That is very Tucker Carlson. I will say that. All right.
Very good at it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's the first minute of a 3-minute piece, but
yeah, it's funny. But
it's a good one.
You get the gist here.
Yeah, that was a pretty good one. I like certainly the what's going on here? What are we doing? Yeah. He doesn't get the brow furrow quite there, but
right. But we're just doing audio.
Very few people can do.
He does.
Oh yeah. Oh, look at that. He got the brow furrow just right, and he's wearing a bow tie, which he's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, I still remember Tucker Carlson when he was a bow tie wearing doofus who failed on Dancing with the Stars, who got taken apart by Jon Stewart, and he's still that same guy.
Yeah. Well. He is, and he's
just
that
has a bigger
much,
audience now.
Yeah, that much more influential streaming rather than
Yeah, but he's colluding with Trump, so there's that. Just like Rogan is, just like all these other little things add up.
For bad reasons.
Little streams get together, form big river. There's probably some Chinese proverb about that, and if there's not, there should be.
All right.
So let me give you Brian Stelter.
Yes.
New from me, he writes. Trump's media bashing, often a dull roar in the background, is an unusually loud howl right now. Every day brings a new complaint or three about the American news media's coverage of the Iran war. The famous one is Brandon Carr, head of the FCC, going to the White House and then coming out and saying anybody who doesn't cover the war as if we're winning should lose their license. Trump is using words, says Brian Stelter, criminal, unpatriotic to assail media companies. His FCC chairman, Brendan Carr, is threatening broadcasters' licenses. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, remember, that's a defense secretary, not a war secretary.
No,
he doesn't have the right or power to rename that department without Congress.
That's true, too.
Is insulting news outlets from the Pentagon press briefing podium. There's nothing subtle about attacking a messenger strategy to discourage independent reporting, but it may betray some anxiety about the war's unusually low public approval rating or how the war itself is actually going. Now, newsrooms are undeterred by Trump's criticism. Attempts to deter and discredit wartime reporting are as old as war coverage itself, which is true. But the rhetoric matters because it's a window into the president's worldview, and it shapes his supporters' perceptions. I don't think his supporters matter as much anymore, but, there are people certainly do. So it's a whole story about that on CNN. Politicians have an obvious motive for claiming the journalism which raised questions about their decisions as false, said CEO Mark Thompson of CNN. At CNN, our only interest is in telling the truth to our audience, and around the world, no amount of political threats or insults is going to change that. Which is good.
All right. I mean, okay.
But let me give you some context behind this. And let's start with a seemingly unrelated but very related piece in the New York Times this morning.
All right.
Which is called Justice Department struggles to take basic steps in targeting Trump's rivals. And this is a really interesting view of what's going on in the courts.
Okay.
A ruling Friday that derailed an investigation into the Federal Reserve chair at an exceptionally early stage showed the limits of President Trump's campaign of legal retribution. Again, to set the stage, Trump was trying to pressure Jerome Powell. Powell wouldn't play ball.
Right.
Trump tried to embarrass him. Powell wouldn't play ball. Trump put political pressure on. Powell rounded up senators who support him on the Republican side and wouldn't play ball. Trump got frustrated. He's trying to appoint a new Federal Reserve chair, but it's not clear that he can, particularly if Powell decides not to step down, because it's quasi-independent.
Yes.
So Trump decided the best thing to do was try to do the Letitia James Comey thing and investigate him, because that's what he does. He uses Pam Bondi in the Department of Justice as a political tool to go after people. Right. And normally what happens is that you do your subpoenas, and then you get a case, and then you go to court, and then you lose.
Yes.
Right? And that's been the sequence. But this is different.
Okay.
Because judges, as the article points, have thrown out two of the most high-profile indictments.
Yes.
Grand juries have repeatedly refused to charge those they're targeting.
Also true.
And now, in the wake of a lacerating ruling by a federal judge derailing an inquiry into the Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, officials at the Justice Department have encountered an even more profound problem. Prosecutors are floundering in the most basic steps of criminal investigations into those President Trump's once scrutinized.
Paperwork. This
was a grand jury subpoena. It wasn't even dealing with the grand jury after the grand jury convened. Bosberg said, you can't even subpoena people for a grand jury because you're so obviously biased. There's zero reason to think Powell broke any laws, and you're just doing this for political retribution. So your whole sequence of events, including tying them up in court, making them pay legal fees, embarrassing the public, you can't even get started with your subpoenas. I'm not letting that happen.
All right. Well, and again, we slipped it in there. This is Judge Boasberg Again.
Right? Could be overruled, but still,
later,
Judge Boasberg's ruling was an extraordinary example of pushback by the judicial branch. So Trump gets frustrated because the judicial branch isn't doing what he wants, and in fact, there is a situation where all the reasonably good lawyers
yes.
in DOJ either quit or were fired, and so the people he has left are people like Jeanine Pirro and Pam Bondi, and they're just not getting the job done.
No, and they were never going to be capable of getting the job done under the best conditions. Minus all
Haba
this
and a whole bunch
stuff.
of other people who aren't even allowed to be in the position that they are. I mean, just,
right.
It's a
for
whole,
the same
it's
reason,
a giant
by
fail.
the way. It's an incredible point. I whispered it in the middle of it. It's Trump and paperwork. Once again, even all the plans he's got, all come together. They all require navigating a system, navigating a bureaucracy, or that has a way of doing things and has a procedure you have to follow. It's easy to follow if you study it, learn the procedure, and go. But if you skip all of that and just say, why don't you just indict somebody? Why don't we just put people in jail? How come we can't just, well, it doesn't work that way. Well, how does it work? And I don't care how it works. Go do it. So their subpoenas are being thrown out. The grand juries that they convene are being dismissed because they haven't been convened correctly. The prosecutors that convene the grand jury aren't actually prosecutors because they've never been confirmed to the job. I mean, just up and down the system. And he keeps thinking, this is rigged against me. And it's like...
Because I told them what to do, and they're not doing it. Because that's the only thing I know about the system.
I mean, it says pull
I have
tab
to know.
to
I'm
inflate,
president.
guy.
The Supreme Court says I can do this.
Yeah.
Except they don't. Not yet, anyway.
It's like standing on, right. I don't know why that comes to mind. Like the airline instructions for your inflatable life vest. It's like him standing around say, I can't believe that this thing won't inflate. Why won't other countries come here and inflate the thing? Sir, pull tab to inflate. Just pull the effing tab and it will inflate. I want another tab. I'm appointing a different person to pull this tab.
I'm rich. I have people
Just
pull tabs for me. I don't pull
it.
tabs myself. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So this is from the article.
All right.
As a general rule, prosecutors are given great leeway in issuing grand jury subpoenas, a common tool in the early stages of investigation. Unlike search warrants, they don't require probable cause that there might be evidence of a crime. But Judge Boasberg found that Ms. Pirro's office didn't even meet the extremely low threshold needed to send a subpoena.
Yeah, okay.
Ruling there was essentially zero evidence to suspect Chair Powell of a crime. Instead, the judge surmised the real reason the subpoenas were issued were political. Trump wanted to strong-arm Powell into lowering interest rates, which is exactly what happened. So again, lower courts fact-find. Higher courts are only supposed to rule on whether or not the conclusion based on the fact-finding was or wasn't constitutional or within the law or whatever.
Yeah, right.
And they're not there to do fact-finding. The fact-finding is done by the lower courts. Boasberg did the fact-finding. The fact is there's no crime here, and Trump is just doing this for political reasons. So I don't see how that gets overruled.
Yeah, I mean, that's if everybody does what they're supposed to do. I mean,
everybody does their job, sure.
Right. Yeah, it's not.
But the only people that don't, as who's the guy that looks like the conservative judge who looks like the captain of the Enterprise.
Looks like the captain of the Enterprise. Which captain of the Enterprise?
Yeah, the original one.
Do we have a series. Oh, I don't know. A federal judge that looks like that? I don't know.
Yeah. Everybody loves him now because he's really super conservative, but thinks he's a never-Trumper.
Okay.
And
Ludwig? The former federal judge? Okay.
Yeah.
Does he look like
Judge
Captain?
Ludwig.
Okay. Or maybe they look alike now. They're about the same age, I guess.
Yeah. But
hey, Justice
every
guy.
time I see him, I say, "Oh, look, it's Captain Kirk." No, that's Judge Ludwig.
Yeah, Justice just sent that too. Judge Ludwig. Yeah, all right, we're all on the same page. Nice.
Yeah. Anyway,
good job.
So he looked at the situation and said, basically, you have to understand that all of the lower courts, with rare exception, are doing their jobs, including Boasberg.
Yes.
It's only at the Supreme Court that things really get screwed up. So. And that's, profoundly political, and that's pretty obvious. But if you want to follow the Constitution like a conservative lawyer, does, you have to give it to them that the lower courts, in fact, are doing what they're supposed to do, for the most part. And that's what Boasberg did here. So Trump's got that sitting on him. Then he's got the war. And
we won
the war isn't going well.
We won. I heard we won.
And so Trump is getting increasingly frustrated because he's sort of, stuck. This is Axios this morning, although there's half a dozen I have here. Behind the curtain, Trump's escalation trap. Trump could wind up trapped between his caprice and the realities of war. He expects a quick, clear victory, but unlike tariffs, the war's outcome is beyond unilateral control and quick fixes, and Iran gets a say. Israel wants the regime change in Iran, and dramatic military destruction as it weighs an invasion of Lebanon, which probably has already started.
Yes.
And Bibi Netanyahu has shown several times when it comes to Iran, he has the ability to convince Trump to take his side. Iran wants survival, and other nations want the free flow of oil. And that is a really toxic mix because none of them line up.
Yeah.
So Trump has grown accustomed to doing what he wants and quickly improvising if things go south. He can't do that here.
Yeah. Actually, I guess maybe the free flow of oil
people,
and the Iranian
again, need to step back and look at the big picture. This has been a military success at a tactical level, and this has been an enormous strategic failure because they didn't really plan for what happens next. Well, just like in Iraq.
Yes. Right, which is worth bringing up because he criticized it so bitterly because it wasn't
shock and awe. And then we install our own regime. In fact, he hasn't gotten that far with Iran yet.
Right. And I guess all the people that he might have thought to install in their regime there, the Coalition Provisional Authority for Iran, I guess would have been the dodgy boys, and they've already left town and are sitting for depositions currently.
Well, not just that. The people who he thought were going to actually run Iran, unfortunately got killed in the first day. He said that.
Yes. He did. I don't
we
think
were going to, find
run.
people who would be willing to work with us, but unfortunately we killed them. And for some reason, everybody left isn't so keen on it.
Yeah. I don't know.
Because I'm a strategic genius, and what's the problem here?
Yeah. The best, I guess at what he thought was going to happen was that people said, and I don't even know if there's really evidence that this is the case, that he thought it would work like Venezuela because Venezuela had just happened, that he would kill the leader of Iran and that there would be ambitious moderates waiting to take the reins.
Right.
But
and he was told by the military that, they could close the Strait of Hormuz, and he ignored them.
Oh.
And, he just
went on.
So last night, and John Favreau, pointed this out. He's losing it. I mean, the pressure is getting to him. This is not exactly the guy you want to be as commander-in-chief. So he has two long posts. I'll read one now, probably one after the break, if we don't have time.
That's a strategy.
This one is about the courts.
All right.
And we were just talking about why he's so upset with the courts. The decision that mattered most to me, he writes, was tariffs. The court knew where I stood, how badly I wanted this victory for our country, and instead they decided to give away trillions of dollars to countries and companies who've been taking advantage of the United States for decades. Our Supreme Court has made these countries very happy, but as the court pointed out, I have the absolute right to charge tariffs in another form, and I've already started to do so. The hundreds of billions of dollars that our adversaries want our country to pay back until I came along should be marked down in the eyes of the public as just another reason why the United States has been in such major decline, but not anymore because we've made America great again. I want to thank Justices Alito, Thomas, and Kavanaugh for their wisdom and courage. Those are capitalized, and goes on and on and on and on. The Democrat justice just vote Democrat. They always stick together. Our country was unnecessarily ransacked by the United States Supreme Court. Yada, yada, yada. This statement about the United States Supreme Court will cause me nothing but problems in the future, but I feel it's my obligation to speak the truth. Thank you for your attention. Make America great again. Donald Trump. That was one of them. And then the other, how courts treat Republicans. And then wacky, nasty, crooked, and totally out of control Judge Boasberg, a man who suffers from the highest level of Trump derangement syndrome, yada, yada, yada. Much like prosecutor deranged Jack Smith and many others, Boasberg is a disgrace, and he just goes on and on and on. And so, what? What is your problem? We have a war going on. Why are you focused on this? This is the stuff that has nothing whatsoever to do with the crises that are going on today, which you can't control, so you are trying to change the subject. Well, you could always go over to the Epstein files if you want to change the subject. I mean,
or someone else will change
you don't want to do that? Well, But
other countries do.
That's why Favreau said this guy's losing his mind.
Yeah, well, he is, and he's being enabled by a small circle of people who just keep insisting, yeah, you can do these dumb things. Let's do it. We can help. They can't. You can't do the things you think you can do. We can't do the things we said we could do to help you. I don't know. I did see over the weekend that I guess France reopening their own Epstein investigations. Just because you mentioned it, but so they would have been asked over the weekend, will you please participate in our war in Iran, or at least help us patrol the Strait of Hormuz? No. And while we're at it, now that we have time on our hands not messing with Iran, we're going to reopen our own Epstein investigation. So not a great week internationally for Donald Trump.
Right. And he hates it when he loses.
Yes.
He can't deal with loss.
I hate him even when he loses. So, we're on the same page. There's a lot of parallels between me and Trump. I do a weave. You know how it is.
So
all right.
The AP's most read piece right now, according to Brian Stelter, is an analysis by Will Weissert saying Trump has grown more agitated with news coverage and has failed to find a way to explain why he started the war, how it will end.
Yeah, who cares?
And nothing that resonates with the public. Even some of his supporters are questioning his plan, and his overall poll numbers are declining. Yes. Meanwhile, Moscow is getting a boost in the war's early days. This is the coverage that he's ranting about.
You're all traitors.
It's getting to him. The pressure is getting to him, and he's acting out.
Yeah.
It's just really, really odd. But it's like right there in front of your eyes.
It is. You're all against me. Well, look, the Ides of March have come and gone, everybody. You had your historical opportunity.
Who stole the strawberries?
But you can, you don't have to wait. It doesn't have to be an Ides, nothing like that.
It's Oscar night, so that was the cane. I just thought I'd mention.
Right, always a good movie reference.
Hi, I'm Scott Anderson, the guy that writes the daily summary for this show, Kagro in the Morning. Thank you to everyone that supports this show. Many of you send donations through PayPal, Patreon, Square Cash, Radio Public, and so on. Some of you write your own essays and send them in, or read articles with your own commentary. We appreciate it. Now, some of you are listening to this and thinking, I'd like to help, but isn't there something I could do that wouldn't require money or effort? Why, yes, there is. You can just like us. On Daily Kos, they call it the recommend button. YouTube has a thumbs up. There are hearts and likes and love buttons. Tap our love button. Tap our love button every day. Share our shows and summaries on Facebook and Twitter, YouTube and iTunes, Stitcher and Amazon. Most of these places allow you to write a review, so a sentence or two would be great. Recommend us to social media, or tell your friends to listen to the show. You aren't just helping us, you're helping them find their new favorite thing to listen to. You could change the world. So thank you in advance from me and everybody else in the world.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to the continuing 5-year mission of the Kagro Enterprise. I don't know what the heck. Okay, I took a look over the break to see what Greg was talking about, and I don't know. I guess I haven't really looked at Ludwig. I've heard his comments and read his comments, but I see it now, and I see the picture in front of me, and I definitely get the resemblance here. I don't know if does it change the way I think of any of the things he said. No, not really, but
no.
Okay, no, I'm just curious.
When you can't remember his name, that's the guy I'm talking about.
Although it would be hilarious to put him in a Star Trek uniform for one of his appearances on TV.
Yeah, as long as it's not a red shirt.
Right, yeah. You can't have that. He could do his speech, and then he could debate Trump, and then say, and I brought a shirt for you, sir. Here's one. Give him the red. Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, it's been...
For those of you who are unaware, the red shirt guys always go down to the planet first and then die.
Yeah. I think that's like shorthand culturally now. Even if you're not a Star Trek fan, people sort of get the Star Trek red shirt guys are the ones who get the Expendables. Somebody has to get phaser blasted in the episode.
Yep.
There's a lot of shooting for a peaceful mission.
Star Trek.
About it. Yeah.
Yeah, but only usually when they first arrive.
Yeah, it's just
and then
great.
They figure out a peaceful solution to try to get out of the fact that they just shot up a whole bunch of people. In fact, it sounds like our usual efforts to try to get in and get out of wars.
Right. Why won't anybody help us keep the neutral zone neutral?
Right.
All right. Well, There's a lot of metaphors in that. And now we all watch earthbound cop movies, which also have a mysteriously large amount of shooting. And then the cops in real life say, I guess we should be shooting some more, based on what I saw last night on TV. It gets worse. All right. There's real news. Don't worry, we haven't run out.
Right. So this is Lawrence Friedman.
Yes.
Writing on his Substack vertical, which is called Comment is Freed, F-R-E-E-D, which is play on his name. The split-screen war, finding a way out of a war gone badly wrong. And again, points out the split screen is on one screen, U.S. doing tactical success with Israel of knocking stuff out. Of course, it gets to be a little like Baghdad Bob. There's no question that the military has been lethal and effective in hitting things and blowing them up. Yeah. But every week, 90% of their ability to shoot missiles at Israel and other countries has been degraded.
Right.
Every week.
Yeah,
and also this week we have 90%, and then next week we're going to have 90%, and yet, missiles still keep coming. Certainly at a lesser rate. They're not coming as fast, they're not coming as furious, but they still come.
Yeah.
And they still, land. And basically, that's one side, and the other side is the complete strategic failure. As Justin Amash, you remember Justin Amash, a Libertarian Republican and retired from Congress. Breaking, President Trump says the U.S. has defeated Iran, and Amash says, oh great, that's like the 5th time Iran has been defeated this week alone.
Yeah.
So this is great. So on another screen, Lawrence Friedman writes, another screen, barrages of missiles and drones are threatening states who had no interest in joining the war but now find their air defenses being constantly tested. Oil and gas production is at risk, and what can be produced can't get out, despite Newt Gingrich's brilliant idea. It has become too dangerous to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, and of course he doesn't write this, but now the Houthis are threatening the Persian Gulf other side.
Red Sea,
which would be the other way to do it. While this goes on, both the regional economy and the whole international economy are in effect being held hostage. In terms of the immediate outcomes of the war, what goes on the second screen is the most important. And it's this feature of the war that highlights the key difference between the two sides. Iran knew what might be coming, and it prepared accordingly. It had a strategy to survive getting their leadership taken out.
Yeah.
And they want to generate sufficient mayhem in the region to create a form of counter-coercion that would put pressure on its enemies. And so far, it's executed this strategy effectively. It survived, which is one of their goals. And the Trump administration now has to be under pressure to find a way to end the war or escalate. And the U.S. and Israel didn't start the war with a clear strategy, and now it's coming, home to roost. Meanwhile, the developing international economic crisis is played down with promises it won't last long and help is on the way, so he's begging people to help him. And they don't want to because he's put tariffs on them. They don't trust him. They don't like him. They don't know what he's going to do tomorrow.
Right.
And the best answer to all of this is they didn't think it would matter because the enemy wouldn't last very long. The classic short war fallacy that when it does not work out, then you have to get into a longer and more complicated war. And that's the problem. That's what the escalation trap is. And how do we know that he's considering that? Because he's afraid to say he lost because he's psychologically unable to. That's why he lost it last night and was ranting and raving at everybody. Yeah. And at the same time, he's sending the Marines, 5,000 worth. What's that for? Probably to either occupy Karg Island, where the oil refinery is. 90% of Iran's oil is associated with that island. Or occupy the shore around the Strait of Hormuz on the Iranian side. To try to prevent ships from getting shot at. And both of those, let's just say, high risk, high reward, if you want to be polite about it.
Yes.
And so now we're in a mess, and his psychological unpreparedness to deal with defeat is, again, why he's losing it when anybody asks him about anything.
Yeah.
What about the war? Well, let me tell you about 2020 and how the election was stolen. I didn't ask about that. Yes, but it's bothering me because everything's bothering me, and shut up and you stink and I'm going to kill you. I mean,
yeah.
That's how he's responding. And you think I'm exaggerating? Yes. Not by his words.
No, no, he's not. I don't know what to say about it. The both of those missions, if either of them are under consideration, are pretty insane, quite honestly. Karg Island is not, by the way, anywhere near the Strait of Dubai. I mean, it's close. It's in the Persian Gulf, but it's at the opposite end of the Persian Gulf. That, I mean...
Just occupying the island wouldn't end the Strait of Hormuz.
No, it doesn't do anything.
No, the point is if Iran is choking off the world's oil but letting its own oil go through the Strait, then we'll make sure that they can't get any oil through the Strait either. That'll show them.
Yeah, they won't build an oil.
Now there's no oil,
and
gas will be $7 a gallon.
I guess.
I'll teach them a lesson.
I mean, Iran has plenty of
coastline on the other side. This is why you can't have tactics without strategy.
Oh, well.
Yes, we can occupy
the island.
Did? Yes, the Marines are great. Yes, they can, occupy the shore of Iran for some period of time. Then what?
15 minutes, I guess, at a time, and that might be enough. I think that who knows? I was going to say, I think what Trump is talking about is...
Yes. Will that bother the people in MAGA who said no more wars? Obviously. So what happens? Well, the point is we can do it, so we will.
Oh, all right. Well, why not go ahead and do that?
So Lawrence Beam goes on to say, again, in so many words, people have to understand this. The question of the security of the Gulf states and shipping has now become the dominant issue. The administration has yet to tell a convincing story about how it is to be addressed. This has revealed a core weakness at the heart of their strategy, which is its inability to talk sensibly and seriously about actual challenges. Reuters has reported on debate within the administration about when and how to end the war, which is why the communications appear to be so confused. One advisor describes how Trump is allowing the hawks to believe the campaign continues, wants markets to believe the war will end soon, and his base to believe escalation will be limited.
Okay.
But this is a rabid animal being pushed into a corner.
Yeah.
In a different context, people have talked about the government of Lebanon like this. Lebanese governments survive by winking a nod at Hezbollah, telling the rest of the world they're going to control Hezbollah and not allow them to, do what they do to Israel, therefore we'll have peace, and tell their own people whatever it is they need to do to survive. And Israel is pushing them, and this isn't necessarily a good thing, but it's a thing, by invading or threatening to invade southern Lebanon. They're pushing the Lebanese government to make a hard choice between Israel and Hezbollah, which they have been world experts for 15 years of trying to avoid.
Yes, sure. Why wouldn't you want to avoid
Which is
that?
understandable if you want to survive. Okay? So now Trump is in the situation where this idiotic war that he started with no strategy has pushed him to the point where he can't keep telling everybody what they want to hear. He's going to have to make some hard decisions. He wants his base to think that escalation will be limited. If he escalates, it's not limited. Mm-hmm. He wants the hawks to believe the campaign continues. It does or it doesn't. If it does, then the markets are not going to be happy. You can't have everybody satisfied at this point, and it's frustrating him because he usually can talk his way out of stuff he can't hear. This isn't the Supreme Court.
Amazingly, he can talk his way out of a lot of their traps for him too. But
only the Supreme Court gets him out of stuff. Or the lower courts, as Judge Ludick has pointed out, as William Shatner has pointed out, are doing their job. But he can't.
They just invent
weasel out of this one.
There's only so much you can do. He's appointed.
How do we know he's failing? J.D. Vance says, shut up.
Oh. Well, yeah.
Why is that important? Vance was against this war. He's leaked that he's against this war. He's now not to be seen. He can't say anything.
Well, he just wanted to do whatever makes sense. War. Yeah, I guess so. Maybe he is.
Witkoff hard to tell and Jared Kushner are getting pilloried for being idiots who got us into this war.
But they are getting paid.
Unusual. Usually they get away with everything. It's
getting away with
it's
enough.
a profound failure. Of course, we've talked about this for years, of the press, that they are far more interested in access and propping up Trump because he's good for clicks. But Witkoff and Kushner getting the treatment they deserve, 10 years too late, but yeah, this is appropriate. And so Lawrence Friedman says, well, given all of that, that leaves Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense/War, whatever you want to call it, who seems to be energized by the opportunities the war brings to inflict death and destruction. But when it comes to what to do about the Strait of Hormuz, Hegseth appears spectacularly out of his depth.
Yeah.
The only thing prohibiting transit in the Straits right now is Iran shooting and shipping. It's open for transit. Should Iran not do that, he said.
Yes. I think
there's no problem with paying back a debt, no matter how big, other than a lack of money.
Yeah, right.
Just fix that and you're golden.
The murder rate would go down to zero if people would stop murdering.
Right.
This is, I think, this Persian Gulf wars, we know where the WMD are. They're in the area of Tikrit and to the southeast, north, and west somewhat. Okay. The straits are open as long as nobody shoots.
Right.
Yeah.
That being the case, basically Iran is, despite the tactical success in hitting them, has put them in a position where they decide whether the war's over or not Trump. It's killing him. Again, that's why he's lashing out at the judges and everybody else.
Yeah. Well, he'd lash out at anybody. Wouldn't make a difference.
Well, but why does he choose in specific spots to do so? Usually staying up late at night, ranting and raving. He doesn't drink, so it's not like Nixon that
right.
took a few drinks and then at 2 a.m. Confronted Henry Kissinger.
It's
more like, at night,
homemade meth.
Well, it's time for me to go to sleep. I close my eyes and all I see is they're against me. I have to do something about it. I'll get on True Social and write an hour-long text.
Yeah, when he gets free from handlers, and I mean he breaks free, and his handlers are afraid to handle him too. But I mean, there's literally nobody in there. If he goes to the residence, he can blab about whatever he wants. He comes out and faces the press on Air Force One, and the aides can't be seen trying to restrain him, so they just let him go. That's why I say that the weekends are the chaos time. You never know what American quote-unquote policy is going to be at any given time, because there are just parts of the day built into his 24-hour cycle where nobody can have any influence on him. And even when they do have influence on him, it's not very much.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I want to end my segment today.
All right, go ahead.
Bye. I want to end my segment today
with
optimistic piece by Tom Friedman, of all people, writing about Minnesota, of all places.
All right, 6 months of good news for Minnesota.
6 months we'll know. Normally you don't think of Minnesota as an optimistic thing to write about, but what he says...
Sure I do. I know, it's tough times. Yeah.
Why Minnesota matters more than Iran for America's future. And he's from Minnesota. He writes about that. The stunning cowardice and boundless greed of big law firms and big tech, and why it's been depressing. But then I spent time in my native state, Minnesota, after something else I'd never seen in nearly 50 years, a spontaneous uprising of civic activism propelled by a single idea. I am my neighbor's keeper, which he calls neighborism.
Or Bible.
Doesn't matter whether he or she is, however he got here, whoever it is, it's our neighbors. Maybe it's the winter. We're winter people. Everybody looks after everybody else. You shovel your neighbor's car because they're going to shovel yours tomorrow. And he opposes, he says, the fundamental indecency of Trump and Miller and blessedly now departed Kristi Noem and Corey Lewandowski, because they're a pair, trying to fulfill their daily quota. I don't just mean that he's the undersecretary. I mean that he was deciding policy.
Right, where he's hiding beneath her skirts, but like really.
Yeah, for evicting illegal immigrants by arresting my neighbors, most of whom work hard, pay taxes, go to church or mosque, and help me dig out my car from the snow. Here's free advice from Trump and Miller. Minnesotans are winter people. Don't come for winter people in winter. They're not afraid of the cold.
Yes, that's good. That's just plain strategy too.
And then talks about Stephen Miller's thing. The only thing that matters is strength. Well, you don't know strength, he says. To fully appreciate what is so new and special, you probably need to have grown up here. I was born in 1953.
Congratulations.
So, wow, this guy is like a year older than me.
Huh.
On the north side of Minneapolis, and I'm old, north side of Minneapolis, I'm a grandhunk. A few miles from where George Floyd was killed, and back in my childhood, everything was binary. White or black, Christian or Jewish. Minnesota was roughly 99% white, but by 2023, 76%.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of demographic change.
Yeah, but it's also a lot of white.
Yeah. The state economy couldn't thrive without immigrants, legal and illegal, as producers and consumers. Immigrants make up 11% of the Minnesota workforce today, 16% of the state's manufacturing work.
I bet that was even the case when they were old and more white, though.
So he talks about specific people he knows, but what he talks about is how neighborism took over, how it's so important, and how it's driving everything.
It's nice.
Everybody has a story about going out to help their neighbors in some way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even like driving the kids to school because the parents are afraid ICE is going to meet them there. So the neighbors drive the kids to school.
It is nice.
And that's how they won.
All right.
And they basically pushed Noam out.
Yes,
they did.
That was
I
fantastic.
think that's important, and I think it's very, very good to highlight.
Yeah, I think, and it's it's called for. It's nice to hear that from Friedman. That he's paying attention to the United States every once in a while.
Yeah,
he's a foreign policy guy. It's American foreign policy, but that's interesting, an interesting perspective. It is a little odd, I think, hearing it sort of the world's three major religions reinvented as neighborism. Like, I don't know, it's in the holy texts of three of the world's major religions, and probably more than I know about. Other major religions about whose holy scripts I do not know, who likewise also probably say you should probably take care of the people around you. But but that's what made it so powerful and so easy to organize along those lines. People have been brought up that way. Yeah. All right. Well, I don't know, very interesting, I think, and I don't know. Yeah, certainly a major disaster that the administration decided, for whatever reason, that they were going to wage for their purposes, we'll say it this way, a most unchristian war in Minneapolis, of all places, the heartland of America, the very coldest of the heartlands of America. We have colder, but it's up in the corner. Unwise and unpopular, and also a long-term loser. And other than that, though, I think they did great. Unwise, unpopular, long-term loser.
Anyway, with everything that happens over the weekend for reasons obscure, the Monday segments are always 10 minutes shorter than
I don't know how that
Thursday
happens.
segments. I think probably because writers take the weekend off, and it just takes them a while to write stuff. And if we're doing pundit roundups, it takes a while for the pundits to get their act together.
True,
so.
But that's what it becomes our
What do I
responsibility
think? I
to do that
told
for you. Sure. All right. You don't need to apologize. You'll probably come back on Wednesday. And
just to be told to come back on Thursday. That's the whole point of showing up.
To go away, and yes, right, true, and right. We have.
See you next Wednesday.
We can always do that. That's a movie reference too, even though the sound is so horrible that by the time you figure out what it was, and it's over. But okay. All right. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Greg. We will wait for checking in again on Wednesday. By that time, we'll have more pundits to round up, I guess. This weekend, we have to do our own punditry, and it's probably better that people get the weekend's news digested here than in certain, let's say, news outlets. So, okay, I appreciate that, and we will talk again on Wednesday, and if going forward anything occurs to you, if there's something you forgot, drop it in the notes, and we'll bring it up. There has been a lot. I'm going to have to sort of scroll through the collection of what I was engaging in social media over the weekend in order to dig some of those things out too. But Instapaper will remind me of some of these things. Jared Kushner, mentioned by Greg during the segment, is becoming a bigger and bigger story, and I think long story short on him, I have to mention at least, where's the headline on him? I give you a better digestion of the headline. Even if the pundits haven't written on it yet, LOL GOP has. And I think that's important. The New York Times factual statement of the case was available over the weekend, though. And what's their headline here? Jared Kushner, which I now spell with a Q because he's Middle Eastern. Jared Kushner solicits funds for his firm while working as Mideast envoy. I don't know if anybody thought that was an issue or a problem. President Trump's son-in-law is trying to raise $5 billion or more from foreign governments and others for his private equity firm. Everyone knew that this was a problem the first time around, but he waited until after he had left government, after the exit of the Trump administration, first Trump administration from power. Then Kushner set himself up with a private equity firm and went and raised $2 billion from most of the Persian Gulf states that are now being bombarded thanks to Trump's idiotic war with Iran. And all worked out very nicely. And he got to strut around the world being a rich guy. Now he's back and negotiating in the area again, and all of his partners who have donated to his firm through their sovereign wealth funds are being bombarded by the Iranians, and he would like to have $5 billion more, please. And I'm not certain where we stand on that, or where the Middle Eastern governments stand on that. They have so much money that it could be the case that they may say, I guess he's saying another $5 billion will keep him engaged in the game, and it may be that he's able to walk some of this back. He's got influence with Trump. He's got influence with Israel. Maybe it'll work. $5 billion, certainly among us, is literally nothing to us because we have way too much money, and it's insane the scale at which we're hoarding it. On the other hand, it could easily be, hey, we gave this guy $2 billion and all he did was bring this war to us. Maybe he was surprised by it. Maybe he didn't have enough advance notice to talk Trump out of it. Maybe Trump wasn't listening. But maybe if we double down, Trump, that'll be language that Trump understands. I don't know. But in the meantime, one, he's not really even in government per se this time. He's just sort of doing it out of the goodness of his heart. P.S. plus another $5 billion. And I don't even know whether he's a special government employee at this point or what. And, of course, Witkoff, who does occupy an actual government position, is equally compromised and equally tied up in Trump's personal fortunes. So it's just not any good for anybody. But so that's the facts of the case over the weekend. And I mean, the smart way to do it would be probably to read that and then digest it a little bit by reading LOL GOP. The fun way of doing it, though, would be to assume those facts are already in evidence and go with his view on this thing. Jared Kushner's corruption is a national security disaster. He just goes right at it in his own Substack, The Cause. The president's son-in-law dragged America into a war because he only serves his conflicted interests. This is an interesting perspective. Not a lot of people talking about Jared Kushner having talked Trump into the war, even though everybody thinks Israel talked Trump into the war. And if Israel did it, then in all likelihood, Jared Kushner had something to do with it. I've mentioned, hey, bold strategy coming right out of the gate with a decapitation war when you stand to inherit billions of dollars, allegedly, if Iran retaliates in kind and decapitates the American government. So I don't know why more people aren't talking about that. Jared Kushner, arched with the swagger of the world's most confident, mediocre man. Arched, I think it's probably marched, but the M is missing, and it didn't get caught because that's a word. And so, spell check. All right, Jared Kushner marched with this maybe swagger of the world's most confident, mediocre man. Walked into the most sensitive nuclear negotiation of the decade on behalf of the United States, representing governments that had paid him $157 million, carrying a pager given to him by the intelligence service of the country that wanted the war most and who just recently assassinated a lot of people via pager, I'm just saying, without a single technical expert, and delivered a war so catastrophic and so convenient that it is impossible to explain as an accident. I probably spent too many hours helping Marcy Wheeler, empty wheel, document the actual story of what foreign money buying access to American power looks like. Her Ball of Thread series, linked herein, tells the story of the attack on America's democracy beginning before Russia's attacks on our 2016 elections. We showed what it looks like when it's real and when it's manufactured. The Hunter Biden story, that's the manufactured part, was mostly made up. Kushner's corruption is so thorough and vast that America hasn't even begun to reckon with what a disaster it is for everything this country once aimed to stand for. I was going to double back and talk more about Hunter Biden, but he does it here. Where's Hunter is the next section subheader. Listen, there was a moral case against Hunter Biden, a man writhing in massive grief and addiction after suffering losses that are painful for even a stranger to recollect. He took cash from foreign baddies while his father held the second highest office in the country. The ethics were as bad as the optics. The case was investigated beyond propriety as Republicans tried to abet a likely Russian spy trying to frame the Bidens. And 2 Republican-led Senate committees investigated the central claim that Biden policy bent to protect his son's position at Burisma and concluded that the answer was no. Joe Biden pushed to fire a Ukrainian prosecutor whom the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, the European Union, EU, the State Department, ours, right, and Senate Republicans, by the way, all demanded be fired. If Burisma was buying the Bidens' protection, it should have asked for a refund. Now, consider what the actual corruption laced with nepotism as a national security threat looks like. Although we'll have to do most of that on the other side of this break. The next header is Jared's corruption can be seen from space. It's corruption performed at such cartoon levels of compromise and treachery that it's become something people just take for granted. I guess almost background noise, right? I guess that's easier than facing the horrific implications of this kind of moral rot at the heart of the American presidency that has now delivered what looks more and more every day like one of the greatest geopolitical miseries of the century. All right. Jared Kushner incorporated Affinity Partners. That's the name to look out for. The day after Trump left office in January of 2021, and 6 months later, $2 billion from Saudi Arabia. All right. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's continue with the reading through LOL GOP's. Take a look at his look at Jared Kushner's cartoonish corruption and what it means. We were just recounting the launch of Affinity Partners immediately after departing office, immediately after Trump departed office anyway. I think Jared took off a little early from Trump term 1 anyway. But just days after Trump left office in January of 2021, he incorporated Affinity Partners, and 6 months later he secured $2 billion just from the Saudi Arabian government, their sovereign wealth fund, the same government he'd spent 4 years negotiating with on America's behalf. So immediate cash in there. The Saudi screening panel objected, by the way. Does everybody remember this? They have a governance board for their sovereign wealth fund. But again, it is a sovereign wealth fund. We understand that here in the West as like, okay, we don't have one, but other countries that have a sovereign wealth fund, well, it has to sort of invest in the national interest, and the returns of the investment go toward projects at home, maybe even balancing the budget of that country. But here in America, 1, we don't have one, and 2, we forget from time to time that, and that's why we call it Saudi Arabia. Don't forget, it's a country that's owned by a family, and it's a sovereign wealth fund. Well, that family is the sovereign of the country. So the sovereign wealth fund is, theirs. But they do because they like to adopt some Western trappings. Let's have a flag. Let's have embassies. We'll join the United Nations, as opposed to, like, does the Kennedy compound in Hyannisport try to join the United Nations? No, it doesn't. It doesn't. Sure, it's private property. It's owned by them. Their home is their castle, but they don't make out to be a nation all on their own. But Saudi Arabia is a very large estate. So they have opted to go that route. And so we'll have a board of governors of some sort for our sovereign wealth fund. But again, it's the sovereign's wealth fund. So the board objected, but the sovereign didn't. So who wins as between the board of directors and the sovereign when you're talking about sovereign wealth funds? Probably the sovereign. And in this case, yes. Right? So the screening panel objected. They said Affinity's management was inexperienced. It was. Its operations unsatisfactory in all aspects. 6 out of 10? 8 out of 10? No, all of them. All aspects unsatisfactory. And the proposed fees that the affinity partners would charge them for investing their money are excessive. But guess what? MBS overruled them, not only because he's a sovereign, although he really isn't. Somebody else is the king of Saudi Arabia. He's just very old, and nobody believes that he's actually in control, which is familiar sounding now that I think about it. But MBS is the crown prince, so there's pretty good reason to believe you should just start obeying him now, because pretty soon he'll be the king anyway. And 2, MBS is also known as Mr. Bonesaw, so you decide whether or not you're going to buck this guy. All right, MBS overruled them. It is a sovereign wealth fund after all. The panel's own documents explained why the investment made sense anyway. Why would it make sense to invest $2 billion with Jared Kushner when his fees are too high, he's unsatisfactory in all aspects, and is inexperienced? Well, because you could form a strategic relationship with Affinity's founder, Jared Kushner, and maybe he'll be in power again. Okay, so there you go. It's in other words, the investment of $2 billion makes sense to form a strategic relationship with Kushner, not Affinity Partners, Kushner. That's important. By 2024, the founder, Kushner, had collected $157 million in management fees from foreign governments, $87 million from Saudi Arabia alone, while generating how much return on investment? Anyone want to guess? Like 2%, 3%? It's unsatisfactory in all aspects, right? How about 0 return on investment for any of his clients? And then he came back to negotiate on, quote unquote, America's behalf. All right. Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess the racket worked the first time. Try it again. See if it works this time. But I know we keep referring to, Saudi Arabia, they gave Jared Kushner $2 billion. Well, technically, no. They gave Affinity Partners $2 billion. They were supposed to invest that money and, of course, make money for Saudi Arabia. So they figured, we'll be able to gain influence with Jared Kushner and we'll make some money as well. So I guess it's all okay in the end. Now they found out, 1, they're not making any money. And 2, they may or may not have any influence with Jared Kushner, or Jared Kushner may or may not have any influence with Donald Trump. So we're not even sure what we bought. But while we keep saying, they gave Jared Kushner $2 billion, they really didn't. But what they really did do is give his fund $2 billion, and he collects fees for managing those funds to the tune of $157 million from Saudi Arabia alone, I guess. Oh, no, $87 million from them. $157 million all told. That's right in his pocket. That's not anything like, you don't need to invest that money. That's just money he skimmed off the top and kept for himself. And again, not for keeping, I don't know whether it doesn't say that it wasn't kept as fees for Affinity, and maybe he gets 50%, 75%, 80%. I don't know what percentage of the fees that Affinity charges go to Jared Kushner personally. We should probably track that down. But it's more money than you'll ever see. So think of it that way. So now he's come back to negotiate on America's behalf, not his own, America's. Sure. The entire architecture exists for one purpose, LOL GOP continues, to reach Donald Trump, and every government that has paid him, Kushner, knows it. Legal scholars have noted that this arrangement, a private citizen collecting 9 figures from foreign governments, then returning to conduct, he probably should have scare quoted this, American diplomacy with those same governments, is precisely what the Foreign Agents Registration Act was written to prevent. And of course, you could have said the same thing about emoluments clauses and various other prohibitions in the Constitution, but because he's pretending he's not a government employee right now, I guess he thinks he squeaks by on that one too. Kushner was never required to register under FARA, of course. He was handed a title instead. Endless patience for Putin, but can't wait a weekend for Iran is the next section here. Let's see what this means. After months of letting Putin make a mockery of negotiations with Ukraine, Kushner and Witkoff sat down with Iranian negotiators in Geneva in February. So after not getting anywhere with Putin on Ukraine, they turned their attention to the Middle East. They gave away the game by choosing not to bring any nuclear technical experts. We did mention that last week, right? And they heard the magic words enriched uranium and freaked out and said, you can't have any, you got to have 0, you can't have any percentage. We don't understand anything about how this works. No, across the board, even though the United States built that reactor for Iran and has known what they've done there and how they operate it and what kind of enrichment is necessary for peaceful purposes. They just didn't know what they were negotiating about. Witkoff expressed surprise that Iran produces centrifuges. It has for decades. He called for Iran's IR-6 enrichment device, he called it probably the most advanced centrifuge in the world. It isn't. And referred to Natanz, Fordo, and Esfahan as industrial reactors. They are, it is noted parenthetically, enrichment facilities, not reactors at all. One can learn by Googling. One of the most clownish moments in the history of diplomacy, came when Witkoff put on his red nose and suggested that the Tehran Research Reactor, a facility the United States itself built for Iran in 1967, was actually a secret weapons site. Third parties present say Witkoff then badly misread the Iranians' statement about their enriched uranium stockpile, where they were saying all of it could go away in a deal. He heard a boast about having enough for 11 bombs. The Omani foreign minister flew to Washington to try to tell America that a breakthrough offer was on the table, but the bombs fell 36 hours later to prevent a peace deal. Kushner and Trump's excuses for what they were going to do anyway is the next section. After the war began, Kushner and Witkoff made the case that the war was the only option, which is true if your goal was always war. Witkoff told Trump that Iran was, quote, basically playing games, unquote, and that even an Obama kind of deal, if you want one, would take months. Trump himself confirmed at a press conference that Kushner was one of the handful of advisors who convinced him, there's the answer, to launch the strikes. Oh, wait, unless he's a huge liar. And I forgot that possibility. But he says that he convinced him to launch the strikes based on what Steve and Jared and Pete and the others were telling me. I thought they were going to attack us. The intelligence community said Kushner was being dishonest. Trump administration officials told congressional staff in private briefings that U.S. intelligence did not suggest Iran was preparing to launch a preemptive strike. Senator Mark Warner, the top Democrat on the Intelligence Committee, said, I saw no evidence that Iran was on the verge of launching any kind of preemptive strike against the United States of America. Now, either Trump is just lying, totally possible, or he's telling us that his son-in-law fed him a bigger lie than the monstrous deceptions that led us into the Iraq War and Trump's attempted coup on January 6, 2021. It's a lot of lies. It's a lie that has already delivered a crisis that could last a decade or more, either because he didn't want to put in the hard work to get that deal that essentially rid Iran of weapons-grade nuclear materials, or because war was always Kushner's goal. So the question is, Which interests does Jared Kushner represent that ordered up this war where obliteration is the only comprehensible objective? The answer to who benefits is not complicated unless you remember that America still exists. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman made multiple private phone calls to Trump in February, advocating a U.S. attack on Iran. Saudi Arabia has paid Kushner at least $87 million in management fees since 2021. The UAE, which has also invested more than $200 million in Affinity, was also lobbying Trump behind the scenes to strike Iran. Netanyahu needed the war to stay out of court and in power. Putin needed the oil price shock. Every government that has paid Kushner got exactly what it paid for. America got a closed strait, more than a dozen dead service members, and oil heading towards $200 a barrel. Our Constitution still exists and accountability is possible, is the title of the next section here, but there is a ticking clock. Kushner's appointment as Special Envoy for Peace. Oh, I guess he actually got an appointment. Special Envoy for Peace. That's a hell of a role to have advocated for war in. On February 19th, started a 30-day window for him to file mandatory public financial disclosure. That deadline is March 21st. Today, again, March 16th. While the clock runs, he is actively soliciting $5 billion in new investments from the same Gulf governments that he's currently negotiating with on America's behalf. The same governments whose calls to Trump preceded the war. In December of 2024, Kushner told a podcaster, so it has to be true, that Affinity, quote, doesn't have to raise capital for the next 4 years. Again, December 2024. Affinity doesn't have to raise capital for the next 4 years, even though somehow he's made zero return on investment. He said that to avoid exactly, he said that to avoid exactly this scrutiny, he's raising capital anyway. And I wonder what the calculation there is. If he took almost 10%, was it 10% of the value of the investment? If he got, I got to do some math here with the calculator. If he got $2 billion, I got to turn it sideways because we've got big numbers to deal with. 200,000, 2 million, 200 million, $2 billion. 10%, of course, of that would be 200 million. And they've pocketed 187 million already in fees. So just a little under 10%. And I don't know, actually, probably it's probably a nice round percentage, actually, if I do the math. But figuring out what the math is not all that easy. But anyway, let's see. Does that help? Yeah, so 9.5% in that neighborhood. 9% is 180 million. I can't do the algebra in my head. It would be easy if I remembered my algebra better. But so guessing in that neighborhood. But zero return on investment, but you lose the fees anyway. That's the beauty, of course, of being a financial advisor to fabulously wealthy people. They actually build that into the price of doing business. But I was wondering whether the fees, like at that burn rate, zero return on investment minus 9.5% worth of fees, I guess it really should stretch past, what did he say, 4 years? It would have been December of 2028 before they had to raise capital again in order to keep paying themselves the same amount in fees. It's a kind of remarkable thing. Anyway, so the point really was he told the press we don't need to raise any more money so that they would look away while he went to raise more money. Why would he need to raise more money if he said he didn't need the money? Because he gets 9.5% of it put in his pocket. So why not? It was so much fun to pocket $187 million when I got a $2 billion investment. What if I got a $5 billion investment? Why, that would be even more money we would be able to keep. Anyway, so he said all that he didn't need to raise any money to avoid scrutiny, but here he is raising the money anyway so that you're looking the other way when he does it. Who didn't need this war? You. All of us will only be less safe, poorer, and more desperate as a result. In fact, this disaster looks to be supercharging a reordering of global powers that would only please those glad to see the end of American hegemony. The countries disrupted by the Hormuz closure are not sitting still. They're accelerating the structural shift away from the dollar-denominated oil order that has guaranteed American power since Bretton Woods. Chinese firms have pledged $225 to $250 billion to green manufacturing projects outside China, a sum that now surpasses the inflation-adjusted value of the entire Marshall Plan, in case you were wondering how that stacks up. Where did I see this one? I was thinking, again, somebody making a clever statement over the weekend that once again reminds us that part of buying into the MAGA philosophy is buying into the idea that it's somehow beta wimpiness to maintain the international order that guaranteed American international hegemony around the globe, and that everybody should be pinning their national currencies to the value of our currency and depending on America to maintain the free flow of not only oil but all sorts of other goods around the world, and that somehow that was wimpy. And the real manly thing to do is to destroy all of that and hand over power in a vacuum to the next biggest contender the world can produce. It was everybody's favorite satirical humorist type on Blue Sky, everybody's favorite alongside the 10 other favorites. Internet Hippo, you know Internet Hippo maybe. There's a hauntingly beautiful irony, they say, in these morons thinking that carefully crafted American hegemony was actually weak and woke, and they would be the ones who would do power and dominance properly, and immediately bringing everything crashing down. There is a bit of beautiful irony to that, don't you think? All right, it's not that beautiful to live through, but it's perfect as irony goes. Back to the article. China's capacity to produce solar modules, EV batteries, and electric vehicles already dwarfs its actual production, meaning the supply is ready the moment demand arrives. The Iran war is the demand signal. Every nation that decides the Strait of Hormuz is too dangerous, that dollar-priced oil is too volatile, that American military protection is too contingent on the whims of one man's son-in-law, that nation is now in the market for an exit. Kushner's patrons wanted a weakened Iran. They may have purchased the accelerated end of American hegemony instead. Kushner didn't misunderstand these negotiations by accident. He was the Saudi crown prince's primary White House defender after, the murder of a U.S.-based journalist, Jamal Khashoggi. He carries a custom pager gifted to him by Netanyahu, again, danger, and senior Mossad officials. Gah. He fundraised massively from pro-Israel donors after Biden briefly paused bomb shipments to Gaza. He sat down to negotiate the most consequential diplomacy of the decade without a single nuclear expert in the room. The question isn't whether his loyalties were divided. A man can't divide what was never his to give. His incentives are not that mysterious. What's mysterious is how a movement that ran on America first delivered America last and handed the bill to everyone who isn't Jared Kushner. The worst possible scenario comes next. Hunter Biden's foreign entanglements changed nothing. His father's policy never bent. The worst version of Hunter Biden is a grief-wrecked man who traded on his father's name while his father held no power to protect him, made money he probably didn't earn, and paid taxes he definitely didn't pay. It's interesting. Okay. The worst version of Jared Kushner is a man who turned American diplomacy into a job where his only interests are his personal investment portfolio and autocrats who make up the last remaining constituency Trump cares about pleasing. And the most generous possible reading of his actions is that he is a world historical fool. Congress must demand immediate oversight. No Republican should be allowed near a mic without having to explain why Kushner's singular interests have been elevated over the needs of every other American except his liege. If there were ever a no kings moment, it's this war, delivered to America by the boy prince of a wannabe despot, elevated over all expertise and accountability. Nepotism taxes the powerless. Sometimes those taxes are paid by watching an embarrassing relative flounder in an unfit position. Sometimes they're paid with a war that has killed at least 13 Americans, closed the Strait of Hormuz, and sent oil towards $200 a barrel. America's greatest innovation was rejecting aristocracy and qualifications of birth or coupling, qualifications by birth or coupling, because the founders, with all their failings, knew that royals are fools. Or maybe we have to believe they're fools, because if you pick at their intentions at all, their schemes are too dark for a decent mind to comprehend. All right, it's getting very philosophical at the end, but we've reached the end of the LOL GOP article. We've got so much more to get to, and who knows whether we're going to, we'll be filling the week with comments about how much more we have to get to. Let me stop on this subject for the moment. That's not to say I won't be returning to it immediately. But let me, because the mention of the No Kings protest movement was made, and we're approaching a March 28th event, another planned round of protests all across the country, and I imagine presence at the protests will only grow as they have each time. But the No Kings next round of protests is scheduled for March 28th. I have in my pocket, I have in my hand a list of one thing. And it is, I'll just introduce it this way. It is a protest song composed anew by listener Ronnie Cantor, Dr. Ronnie Cantor, as a matter of fact, who's just been corresponding with me a little bit, and I have now to catch up with him in terms of giving you some background information on him and the composition of the song. But I'd like to just play the song, actually. I provided it to Justice recently to use as a bumper between breaks, and he may already have done this. He's got two versions of it. A very nice folky one, and protest music is very often quite folky. Now, I don't even know if we can fit this thing in here, but we'll play it on our way out the break and cap off section 3 of the show with it. We'll do some explaining of it. Just enjoy the music for the moment, though.
I would ask you, where is your heart when the people are calling for love? And I would ask you, where is your mind when the times they are calling for your thoughtful insight? This is a call to action, a call to your heart, to try to pull together and not be pulled apart. I would ask you, what do you do? Are you false in your actions or true? I would ask you, what will you say when your children come and ask you, did you help or turn away? This is a call to action, a call to your heart, a call to together and not be pulled apart. This is a call to passion, a call to unite, a song we sing together to fill our souls with light for whoever you are and whatever you do. The time has come to listen, it's time to follow through, for wherever you are and wherever you've been, you understand the trouble we are in. understand the trouble we are in. It's the man and the woman, the gay and the straight, the people with religion and those who find their own way. It's the people who are perfect in their bodies and their minds, and those who have been suffering and always left behind. This is a call to action, a call to your heart, to try to pull together and not be pulled apart. This is a call to passion.
All right, time for us to make our way out, and I didn't know whether it would be best to try and play the music over and try and mix them. They're on different pages of my soundboard, so a little bit of an awkward thing. I wanted to give you a sample of what Ronnie had sent to us, just so you could contemplate it, and it's a very nice, got that folky feel, great for protest use. Actually predates, of course, the No Kings protest movement, and something that he wrote and contemplated and worked on during the first Trump administration. It should not surprise you. Hi, everybody. It's me, David, still your host for the Kagro in the Morning Show after all these years. Thank you for all your continuing support for the show. And if you're listening regularly and still thinking about getting on board as a supporter, well, the time is now. Patreon.com is the easiest way to make recurring subscription-style payments every month, all year round, to keep us going. patreon.com/KagroX brings you to our page where you can sign up with your monthly support. And hey, have you seen our clever new subscription tiers? It's easier than ever to sign up for, say, one crisp dollar bill for every information-packed 2-hour show. If you're the plan ahead type, there's even a year-long subscription program that saves you 15% on the cover price. Or it would if there was a cover price, or even a cover, for that matter. patreon.com/KAGROX. Thanks again for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Did you enjoy the musical interlude? I hope so. And we'll probably, those of you listening live will probably be hearing it woven in and out during the breaks as well. It's got a great musical hook, certainly. I enjoyed the tune and the lyrics. As I mentioned, this is something that began in Trump's first term. It was pretty clear that we were going to need this kind of musical accompaniment to a protest movement. No idea that it was going to become that much necessary, of course, that much more necessary during a second Trump administration, but he certainly was obviously moved to pick it all back up again when it became necessary. And now that we're all ready to head back out into the streets, perhaps, looking for an anthem that might unite, that could be the song that catches on among the protest crowds. I mean, usually, I guess something, not while you're marching. It doesn't make for an easy sing while you're marching necessarily. But, you're spending your time listening to speakers and in between speakers. I don't know, might not be a bad musical bumper to bring up. And if you were playing it at several sites, while this was, and it became a familiar sound, or wherever you were attending protests, this was being played, whether it was this or some other song. I assume the idea of uniting people that way could be very powerful. And I haven't heard another one put forward as a candidate for doing that. And I like that folky arrangement. There's a stringy and more, I guess, melodramatic arrangement available as well, and that may be getting played also. I gave Justice both versions. We'll see if we can't do a better job of explaining how it integrates into a No Kings movement after I get a chance to finally catch up with the composer of the piece and bring you more commentary on. But it's getting late. It's getting towards March 28th, and I thought I'd put that bug in your ear. In the meantime, more to think about. I want to depart from the straight news read stuff and share something with you that I thought was very interesting. That again, I saw shared via Blue Sky over the weekend. Is it David Roberts, who shared this thing from Volts magazine / online presence. Who knows what people are calling their publications anymore. But David shared what is essentially, I guess, a British psychology journal entry that's a couple of years old now, but which, of course, just like Ronnie's song, we're finding a renewed interest in conclusions that we arrived at perhaps several years ago. This is from September of 2021, immediately following the exit, well, in academic journal world, immediately following the exit of the first Trump administration. But another interesting view, psychological view of Trump and Trumpism and Trump circle that I think goes along with all the other early on diagnoses, I guess, if you will, of Trump and his narcissism and psychopathy and whatever else. This I thought was an interesting viewpoint and an interesting explainer about Trump then, Trump now, where it might be heading, other historical precedent for it. I read it alongside a news article about another, current event that it just clicked to me. I don't know if it'll click to you. It doesn't click to everybody that I share them side by side, but I think you'll see where I'm going with this. Let me, though, read you this from the British Psychological Society. The Psychologist is the name of the publication of the British Psychological Society. This again, September of 2021. The problem of pathocracy, right? If you're a psychopath and also in charge of a government, you have a pathocracy. Do psychologists, they ask in the subheader, have a responsibility to help prevent ruthless, amoral people attaining positions of power? That was a big question. Of course, a duty to warn when you put a pathological narcissist in charge of the United States government, or any government, but certainly the United States government, that much more dangerous. We certainly had that debate last time around and continue to have it. Steve Taylor, the author of this piece, considers the arguments. Now, we don't have to read the entirety of the piece, but I thought the introduction was immediately, the importance of it was immediately apparent. There's further investigation of the subject, but I'll ask you to read that article, the rest of that article on your own. It begins this way. In communist countries, psychology could be a dangerous profession. As with any role, if you didn't use your expertise in service of state propaganda, you were in danger of falling foul of authorities. The Polish psychologist, and here I'm going to give it my best shot at his name, Andrzej Lobachevsky is going to be my best guess here. Andrzej Lobachevsky was persecuted especially harshly, since the focus of his research was political power and how it can be misused. So in a repressive regime, guess what? That's not going to be very popular. After spending his early life suffering under the Nazis, he's Polish, and then under the Soviet rule of Stalin, Andrzej Lobachevsky recognized that ruthless and disturbed individuals were strongly drawn to political power and often constitute the government of nations. Why, that had just happened twice in Poland. He began to study the relationship between power and personality disorders like psychopathy. Do I have that pronunciation right? And coined the term pathocracy to describe the phenomenon. As he put it, pathocracy is a system of government wherein a small pathological minority takes control over a society of normal people. Where do we have that? Since he was living at the time under a pathocratic regime himself, Lobachevsky took great risks studying this topic. He was arrested and tortured by the Polish authorities, and unable to publish his life's work, the book Political Ponerology, do I have that pronunciation right? I don't know. Ponerology, Political Ponerology, was unable to publish it until he escaped to the United States during the 1980s. According to Lobachevsky, the transition to pathocracy begins when a disordered individual emerges as a leader figure, while some members of the ruling class are appalled by the brutality and irresponsibility of the leader and his acolytes, his disordered personality appeals to some psychologically normal individuals. Certainly also to deplorables, but to psychologically normal individuals. Why? They find him charismatic. His impulsiveness is mistaken for decisiveness. His narcissism for confidence. His recklessness for fearlessness. Soon, other people with psychopathic traits emerge and attach themselves to the pathocracy. Where, what, who could see such a thing happening? Sensing the opportunity to gain power and influence. At the same time, responsible and moral people gradually leave the government, either resigning or being ruthlessly ejected. In an inevitable process, soon the entire government is filled with people with a pathological lack of empathy and conscience. It has been infiltrated by members of that minority of people with personality disorders who assume power over the majority of psychologically normal people. Soon, the pathology of the government spreads amongst the general population. As Lobachevsky wrote, if an individual is in a position of political power, if an individual in a political position of political power is a psychopath, he or she can create an epidemic of psychopathology in people who are not essentially psychopathic. Okay. A pathocratic government represents a compelling, simplistic ideology, promoting notions of future greatness, with a need to defeat or eliminate alleged enemies who stand in the way of this great future, making America great again, etc. The government uses propaganda to stoke hatred towards enemies. Anybody seen any of this? And to create a cult of personality around the leader. We definitely don't have this problem, everybody. In the general population, there is an intoxicating sense of belonging to a mass movement, inspiring loyalty and self-sacrifice. In case you were ever wondering, why are these people voting against their own self-interest? The farmers know they're being destroyed. The people who say they want to eject the criminals, but that lawful immigrants will be left alone, voted for him, and now they're being targeted. And some of them are still saying they would vote for him. I went to a Midwestern diner and found out people were suffering immeasurably under Trump, think it's for a greater cause, and will vote for him again. No one's ever seen this phenomenon, right? Present sacrifices become immaterial in the movement toward a glorious future. In addition, the mass movement inspires acts of individual cruelty, including torture and mass murder. Once they possess power, pathocrats usually devote themselves to entrenching, increasing and protecting their power with scant regard for the welfare of others. Not only will you all have to suffer, but we're going to dismantle all of the government that inured to your benefit, and we're going to remove your ability to vote in the next election, and maybe we don't even care what the courts say about anything. I know, scant regard for the welfare of others. However, Lobachevsky also noted that pathocracies never become permanent. That's good news. At some point, they are destined to fail because their brutality and lack of moral principles are not shared by the majority of the population who possess empathy and conscience. This was certainly true of the two pathocracies that Lobachevsky himself experienced, Nazi Germany and the communist regime of Poland. Of course, we sort of helped things along with the entire rest of the world uniting in martial opposition to Nazi Germany. That certainly helped speed things along. Not necessarily the case with the communist regime of Poland, but it took that much longer for that to fall apart. So I guess that doesn't necessarily argue against it either. So there's plenty more, an examination of power and pathology, and I guess I can just give you a taste of that by reading you the next paragraph or so of how that starts. But that's I think the basis of what we need was in the introduction. Reading the above, though, it's difficult to avoid reflecting on the 4 years of Donald Trump's presidency in the United States. And remember, this is all written in 2021 without the benefit of having seen what happens in the first year of Trump's second administration. Psychologists and other mental health professionals are justifiably reluctant to make judgments about the mental health of public figures. Many are careful to follow the Goldwater rule, the convention of the American Psychiatric Association, that it is unethical for psychiatrists to voice their professional opinion about public figures without examining them in person. However, many psychologists and other mental health professionals felt compelled to voice concern about Trump the first time. For example, the psychologist John Gartner formed the Duty to Warn organization. Not just say that he had a duty to warn, he formed an organization. You remember it, I think, which declared that Donald Trump suffers from an incurable malignant narcissism that makes him incapable of carrying out his presidential duties and poses a danger to the nation. The president's niece, Mary Trump, herself a clinical psychologist, also stated her belief that the president suffers from malignant narcissism and possibly other conditions such as sociopathy and dependent personality disorder. When these psychologists were right, whether they were right to speak out or not, it is easy to identify many of the elements of pathocracy in Trump's presidency. For example, there was certainly an exodus of conscientious figures from the administration, more so now, and doubled and tripled down by dodgy, firing everybody. The White House officials who initially saw themselves as the adults in the room but were soon replaced by loyalists is what he's talking about from the first administration. Trump's simplistic Make America Great Again agenda is, to the extent it's an agenda at all, certainly an example of promoting a notion of future greatness. Other pathocratic aspects are his demonization of ethnic and religious groups and the appeal of his impulsive narcissistic personality for a large section of the U.S. population. Then, just as a counter, is there any hard evidence that people with personality disorders, or more specifically with psychopathic and narcissistic traits, are attracted to political power, as Lobachevsky suggested? And he says, I'll begin with a caveat. I'm somewhat reluctant to use labels like psychopath or even speak in terms of specific disorders like psychopathy or narcissistic personality disorder. My view is that partly as a result of books like Hare and Babiak's Snakes in Suits and John Ronson's The Psychopath Test, the term psychopath may have been bandied about too freely. I think that may in fact be the case. But at any rate, as I said, well worth reading the rest of it, but I thought this was an interesting setup. And you probably are also thinking in the current context of Trump's second administration of more examples than the author knew about when he wrote this piece, and you're, no doubt have plenty of examples in mind. As I said, I read it alongside another news article event that's not the most crystalline example that I could think of in illustrating it, but it was just interesting to have read the two of them at the same time. Plus, it brings us to another news item, which I think is important to share. And it is this one from Bloomberg Law, which I hope I can still read in the browser form. Bloomberg sometimes lets you see an article once and then takes it all away from you, but I think this is still available. So this is a report of a recent American Bar Association event. And several of the people who were sharing this story were commenting just in general that they were interested in this story mostly because the American Bar Association is a pretty, milquetoast sort of organization when it comes to commenting on politics at this level, that the president is out of control and insane and pulling down the constitutional order. They tend to hedge themselves a little bit and moderate their language. They certainly will make no bones about pointing out things that they think are in violation of law or unconstitutional, but they couch them in argument terms, I believe, or we seek to prove in our case or whatever. It's not, and this sort of event, a convention of the defense bar in California, and I mean it was open to the national membership, so like a convention could be people coming from everywhere. Not usually the forum where this sort of thing would happen. There was a member of the Trump administration involved in a panel on stage, which is also unusual because the Trump administration lawyers generally avoid/boycott ABA events. They simply say, well, the ABA is a biased organization, biased towards liberals and against MAGA, and we're just not going to participate in their forums. But this guy went to push back. So that was unusual in its own right. And then, of course, also unusual, audience jeering throughout the whole thing. Or I'm told it's unusual. I've not been to an ABA event, but lots of people commenting on this being very unusual. But to me, what I thought was interesting was having read that previous article about how a malignant narcissist psychopath in power can spread the malignancy of their psychopathy to the rest of society in general, not obviously overwhelming or convincing everybody, but certain sectors of society that might previously have been viewed as processing things more normally become convinced that actually the psychopathic view of things is the correct one. And the lawyer participating in the panel presents a candidate for this kind of transformation. I'll read you the article. Trump lawyer rebuked at ABA for saying DOJ in a, quote, better place. This is a Friday article by Ben Penn. Ben, a.k.a. Sven Penn, or Glenn. I don't know which one. But I always loved that name. Ben Penn, senior reporter for Bloomberg Law, covers it this way. A typically collegial white-collar legal conference turned testy when one of the president's defense attorneys faced incredulous and at one point rancorous pushback for praising Trump's Justice Department. John Lauro is the guy we're talking about here. John Lauro, who represented President Donald Trump in special counsel Jack Smith's 2020 election interference case, offered a starkly opposing view to his co-panelists Friday at an American Bar Association hosted discussion in San Diego on threats to the rule of law. That was the nature of the conference. Veteran department officials and a former judge described a constitutional crisis playing out under Attorney General Pam Bondi. You are familiar with that constitutional crisis. We talk about it every day. So I guess, was it like a 7-person panel? 6 out of the 7 people on the panel on the stage, maybe including the moderator, were basically there to say, hey, there is a constitutional crisis playing out under Attorney General Pam Bondi. But Lauro was there too, and he said DOJ is in a better place than a year earlier because I have the unique experience of representing a political figure who was probably more abused by the criminal justice system in America than any other political figure ever. And I'm sure that got eye rolls and groans right away, right? Everything that has gone on in the current administration must be looked at from the eyes of a man who was victimized. He always thinks he's the victim. Victimized by the criminal justice system, added Lauro, who is closely connected to Bondi and Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. Retired U.S. District Court Judge Nancy Gertner, who now teaches at Harvard Law School, later retorted, whatever the issues were with respect to the Trump prosecution, and here I'd be like, here's for the milquetoast, right? There weren't any. I mean, I'm sure there were things that people could nitpick about, and there were certainly, in some cases, in some places, things where, I don't know if I would have gone that direction necessarily. Some of the state prosecutions, like in Georgia, certainly had their own problems. But she's conceding too much. But okay, that's what they do. She's a judge. Whatever the issues were with the respect to the Trump prosecution, they do not justify the fracture of American democracy. Okay, very little justifies the fracture of American democracy, so I think she's safe. When Lauro was pressed later by an attendee in the crowd, former Arizona federal prosecutor Mark Kokanovich, how he could assert the situation is improved, other attendees applauded. Well, it's very clear, Lauro replied to Kokanovich. We're not prosecuting the leading political opponent to President Trump right now, as took place in the Biden administration. Now, the article just goes on past this, which is pretty amazing, and there's lots more to learn from it, but I have to pause there, right? The question is, how can you say things are better now than they were a year ago? And he says, well, duh. Are we prosecuting President Trump's leading political opponent right now, which, like, hello, psychopath, are you looking? Like, yes, we are. And of course, he's standing on the stage saying, see, we're not, right? Because obviously, well, I mean, he's probably up there saying, well, name names. And well, you could name those names. Letitia James, Adam Schiff, James Comey. You know, well, are we prosecuting those people? No, only because all the judges who have seen the case have thrown it out. You brought charges against them, and you still continue to try to bring charges against them, and many others as well. And Lauro could answer that either by, well, I asked whether we were prosecuting them, and we aren't right now. Well, you're trying mightily, and in fact, you're saying you might do it anyway, despite the fact that the cases have been thrown out. Or Lauro might answer, well, those people are criminals. They're not the chief political rivals to Donald Trump. They're not running for president. Well, nobody is right now. It's 2026. Nobody's a declared candidate for president. Donald Trump was in a rather unique position following the 2020 election in that, one, he was pretty much immediately a declared candidate for 2024, and he was also a criminal defendant because of actions taken outside the scope of the presidency. And that's, it wasn't that it was unfair of him to face criminal prosecution. It's that even if you take Lauro's view of things, that the Supreme Court eventually explained to everyone that they were wrong about presidential immunity, we didn't know it then. Even if they're correct now, which they aren't. We were prosecuting a criminal suspect, and he declared himself several years early for the presidency in 2028. So we don't know if we're prosecuting Donald Trump's chief rival yet, because the Democratic Party, nor has anybody else named who the chief rival is. And of course, we don't know whether Donald Trump is of a mind to actually try to run for a third term, constitutionally or otherwise. But if he isn't, then there can be no chief political rival in Lauro's terms anyway. But to stand there and say, well, we're not prosecuting his political rivals, chief or otherwise, would clearly be a false statement, even though those cases have often been dismissed. He's still looking for ways around that. It's pretty clear that the example, his chief example, is just flatly wrong. Not just wrong, but upside down and backwards and from a bizarro world. Now there's more to the article. Another of the many former assistant U.S. attorneys turned white-collar defense lawyers gathered in San Diego took a less diplomatic approach during the audience question and answer session. I wanted to thank Mr. Lauro for admitting the emperor has no clothes. The rule of law is dead because the people in this room and the Department of Justice pissed off President Trump, and we have a president who can dictate what is done and what is not done, said Mitchell Epner, a former federal prosecutor in New Jersey. Thank you for admitting that the dictator in place in the White House has killed the rule of law. I really appreciate that. Of course, some attendees in the audience again clapped, and Lauro answers sarcastically back, I know this has been a therapy session for you, and I hope that has helped, which is ironic given how crazy he is, responded Lauro, who is a former federal prosecutor in the Eastern District of New York. I know this is an emotional time for you. Someone in the audience then shouted, you're a clown, which, well, they seem to have it right. Lauro remained calm throughout the 2-hour session, and the 7 other lawyers seated next to him on the stage engaged in civil yet vehement disagreements about the department some said is being unconstitutionally controlled by Trump. The discussion reflected a palpable vibe shift towards despair over DOJ norm breaking and judicial attacks at an event where practitioners have in prior years tended to offer politically neutral analysis of government trends. Sandy Weinberg, the Zuckerman-Spader attorney moderating the panel, has known Lauro, his former law partner, for more than 40 years. But on several occasions, Weinberg interrupted Lauro's defense of Trump administration actions with sharp questions. I can't believe that you think that that's normal or good, that one person can dictate who the Department of Justice investigates and indicts, Weinberg said. That's what the Supreme Court said, Lauro countered, referring to the justice's 2024 decision granting Trump and any president immunity. There's more. Other panelists, including Obama White House counsel Neil Eggleston and Aaron Zebley, top deputy to special counsel Robert Mueller in his probe of Trump, took turns respectively arguing that Lauro's reasoning was invalid. But the reason I wanted to read at least this far into the article is I was captivated, I guess, by the fact that the panel moderator is a former law partner of Lauro's and has known him for 40 years and is basically saying, I can't believe you think this is a good thing. I can't believe that you think this is good and right and normal and the way it should be, and that Trump is the victim here and that everybody else has been wrong about the way you should or shouldn't conduct yourself as president of the United States with respect to the Department of Justice. He is, in other words, saying, I knew you once to be a level-headed and capable attorney, a smart person, somebody dedicated to the preservation of the Constitution and the rule of law. What has happened to your brain? What has gone wrong here? Where have the wires become crossed? And maybe, I wondered, the answer might in fact be in that examination of the, what did we call it? The psychopathic overtake of the government, the pathocracy, the problem of pathocracy. Oh, I'm getting a weather alert, so it's about time for me to leave. Don't worry, everybody. It's probably not a tornado that will destroy our home base and broadcasting, but don't panic. Stay tuned next for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, where I think they're not having tornadoes. Justice Putnam will be able to stay above ground to bring you his stories, starting off with the Trump fundraising off of the deaths of fallen troops. That's right. For some reason, he's not afraid of that picture of him in the hat anymore.
You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
All right, well, hopefully we'll be here tomorrow and everything will be fine. Stay safe, everybody, and if you do see a tornado, get away from the window. I'm going to, I guess, go look out the window to see if there's any tornadoes, but only briefly before retreating to the basement. All right, well, we have to keep some good humor in mind to make it through all the crises we face these days. See you tomorrow.